My son was hardly breathing when I found him in the ditch. Rain came down in sheets, cold and mean, the kind that soaks through your jacket in seconds. I'd been driving the county road looking for Wilbur's truck when my headlights caught something dark and wrong in the drainage culvert. I pulled over hard, tires spitting gravel, and ran. He was face down in the mud and water, one arm twisted under him, jacket torn. I grabbed him by the shoulders and rolled him over. His face was bruised, lips split, one eye already swelling shut. He coughed, spat water, and tried to focus on me. "Dad," he said. His voice came out like gravel. "Don't talk, I got you." I hoisted him up, my boots sinking in the muck, and half carried him to the truck. He was 6'2" and solid, but fear makes you strong. I got him in the passenger seat, cranked the heat, and wrapped my jacket around his shoulders. He was shaking, whether from cold or shock, I couldn't tell. "Hospital," I said. "Dad, wait." He grabbed my wrist. His grip was weak but insistent. "You need to know what happened. We'll talk after they check you out." "No. Now." He coughed again, winced. "My fiancé's father did this. Richard Cole. He said my place is in the ditch, not with them at the table." Before we continue, we ask you to subscribe and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I stopped moving. Rain hammered the roof. The words hung there between us, ugly and deliberate. "He said that?" Wilbur nodded. "He had 2 guys with him. They grabbed me outside the gate, told me I wasn't good enough for Miranda, then threw me out here. Literally threw me." He looked at me, shame and anger fighting in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Dad. Don't apologize, not for this." I believed him. I believed every word. And in that moment, I understood I wasn't done being a father. The hospital was 15 minutes away. I drove fast but careful, one hand on the wheel, the other checking Wilbur's pulse at his wrist. He stayed conscious, which was good. He kept talking, which was better. "I tried to call you," he said. "Phone's in the ditch somewhere. We'll get it tomorrow." Miranda didn't stop them. She was right there, and she didn't say anything. That hurt him worse than the bruises. I could hear it in his voice. "Focus on breathing," I told him. "We'll deal with the rest." The ER intake nurse took one look at Wilbur and got him in fast. Bruised ribs, possible concussion, lacerations, no broken bones, no internal bleeding. "Lucky," they said. I didn't feel lucky. 2 cops showed up while they were stitching Wilbur's lip. One was young, maybe 30, with that eager rookie energy. The other was older, gray mustache, the kind of guy who'd seen everything and cared about nothing. The older cop took the lead. "Your son have anything to drink tonight?" "No." "How do you know?" "Because I know my son." He wrote something in his notebook. "Witnesses say he stumbled out of a private event. Sounds like he might have had a few and lost his footing." "Witnesses," I repeated. "Which witnesses?" "Can't share that information." "Was one of them Richard Cole?" The cop's face stayed flat, but his eyes shifted. Just for a second. That told me everything. "Mr. Raines, best thing you can do is let this go. Boys get rowdy sometimes. No need to make it a bigger deal than it is." I smiled at him. Not a friendly smile. The kind you give a man who's already lost and just doesn't know it yet. "Thanks for the advice, officer." He handed me his card, told me to call if I remembered anything useful, then left. The younger cop lingered, looked like he wanted to say something, then followed his partner out. When the doctor cleared Wilbur to go home, it was past midnight. I got him in the truck, drove slow, and didn't ask questions. He leaned his head against the window and closed his eyes. At home, I helped him to the couch, got him settled with pillows and a blanket. I checked his pupils with a flashlight, made sure his breathing was steady, and watched his chest rise and fall. This was the same kid I'd sat with through fevers and nightmares after his mom left. Same kid I taught to change oil and throw a punch. Same kid who called me every Sunday just to talk. I'm sorry I dragged you into this, Wilbur said quietly. You didn't drag me anywhere. They dragged you. I'm just here to pick you up. He closed his eyes. What are you gonna do? Get you better, then handle the rest. Once he was asleep, I stepped outside into the cold. The rain had stopped, leaving everything slick and dark. I pulled out my phone and called my brother. Tom answered on the second ring. Vince, it's late. Remember what Dad said? It's time to act. There was a pause. Then, name. Richard Cole. Cole Developments? Yeah. Another pause. I'll need details, but if you're calling me, I'm guessing you're not calling the cops. No. We're calling family. Good, Tom said. Give me 24 hours. Tom didn't waste time. He worked in private security and corporate risk assessment, which was a fancy way of saying he knew how to find dirt and apply pressure without anyone seeing his fingerprints. He'd spent years learning who was connected to who, which palms got greased, and where bodies were buried. Not literal bodies, the kind that showed up in ledgers and email threads. The next morning, while Wilbur slept on the couch, Tom called me from his car. Cole Developments has been in business 30 years, he said. Richard Cole built it on land deals and city contracts. He's got friends on the zoning board, the permits committee, and probably half the town council. But friends like that make enemies. What kind of enemies? The useful kind. I'm meeting someone in an hour. Former bookkeeper named Connie Voss. She left Cole's company 6 months ago, filed a wrongful termination claim, and lost. She's got an axe to grind and a memory like a filing cabinet. You think she'll talk? She already agreed to meet. I'll call you after. He hung up. I sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee that had gone cold. Wilbur stirred on the couch, groaned, and opened his eyes. How you feeling? I asked. Like I got thrown in a ditch. Good. That means you're not forgetting. He sat up slowly, touching his ribs. What's the plan? Tom's working on it. You serious about this? Completely serious. Dad, these people have money, lawyers, influence. I know. So what are you gonna do? Beat up Richard Cole in a parking lot? No, I'm gonna make him small. Wilbur looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. While Wilbur rested, I drove back to the road where I'd found him. Daylight made it worse. The ditch was shallow, muddy, and littered with trash. I could see the scuff marks where he'd been dragged, the broken weeds where he'd tried to get up. Across the street was a coffee shop, one of those local places with mismatched furniture and handwritten menus. I went inside, ordered a black coffee, and waited until the owner came out from the back. His name was Paul. I knew him vaguely from around town. Paul, I need a favor. He wiped his hands on a towel. What kind? My son got hurt last night, right across the street. Do you have a security camera pointed at the road? His expression shifted. Yeah, points at the parking lot, but it catches the road too. Can I see the footage? He hesitated. This about the Cole place? Yeah. He nodded slowly. Those people are a pain in my ass. Their drivers block my deliveries, park in my spots, act like they own the whole street. I've complained to the city 3 times. Nothing. So you'll help? Damn right I will. He pulled up the footage on his laptop, skipped to the timestamp I gave him. There it was, grainy but clear. Wilbur walking toward the Cole gate, 2 men grabbing him, a brief struggle, then Wilbur being shoved hard, stumbling backward, falling. The audio was faint but audible. You could hear shouting, and one phrase, cold and clear, "He doesn't sit at this table." Paul burned the footage to a thumb drive without me asking. You didn't get this from me, he said. I never even came in here. They didn't just hurt my son, they documented it for me. Tom called that afternoon. Connie gave me gold. Cole's been paying off a zoning official for years. She's got copies of invoices labeled as consulting fees that line up with every major permit Cole Development's pushed through. And she's got emails. Personal emails where Richard jokes about how easy it is to buy lunch for the right people. Is that enough? For what? A criminal case? Maybe not. For ruining his reputation and freezing his contracts? Absolutely. I'm drafting a package now. We'll send it to the city ethics board, the local paper, and a state oversight office, all at once. No warning. When? Tomorrow. Good. I drove to the Cole house that afternoon. It was in the north part of town, behind a tall iron gate with brick columns. I rang the buzzer and waited. A voice crackled through the intercom. Yes? Vincent Raines. I'd like to speak with Richard Cole. There was a pause. Then, Mr. Cole is not available. Tell him it's about his daughter's fiancé. Another pause. Then the gate opened, but Richard didn't come out. Instead, two private security guys walked down the driveway. Both were big, both wore earpieces, and both looked like they'd done this dance before. Mr. Cole doesn't want to see you, the first one said. That's fine. I'll wait. No, you won't. You need to leave. The second one stepped closer, trying to crowd me. I didn't move. I'm not trespassing. I'm standing at the gate, and I'm not leaving until Richard hears what I have to say. Sir, we're asking you nicely. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Wilbur's voice, recorded the night before in the truck, filled the air. My fiancé's father did this, Richard Cole. He said my place is in the ditch, not with them at the table. The security guys froze. I let the recording finish, then pocketed the phone. That's my one courtesy call, I said. Next time it's public. I turned and walked back to my truck. Neither of them stopped me. When I left Richard Cole's gate, it wasn't revenge anymore. It was schedule. The ethics complaint hit the city board on Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, a reporter from the local paper called Richard Cole for comment. By Wednesday, the story was front page. Cole Developments under scrutiny for permit irregularities. The article was careful, legally vetted, but damning. It outlined the pattern of fast-tracked permits, the consulting fees, and the emails Connie had provided. It didn't accuse Richard of bribery outright. It didn't have to. The implication was enough. Tom called me Wednesday evening. It's spreading. 3 of Cole's active contracts are now under review. That means frozen. No work, no money moving. He's bleeding. Good. There's something else. Frank Delaney reached out to me. Who? Former business partner of Richard's. They had a falling out 5 years ago over a land deal. Richard cut him out, kept the profits. Frank's been waiting for a chance to kick him when he's down. What's he offering? Documentation, side payments to council members, personal favors, stuff that makes the consulting fees look like parking tickets. Can we use it? Already did. Sent copies to the same 3 places. State oversight is opening a formal investigation. I leaned back in my chair. How long until Cole figures out it's us? He already knows, or suspects. Doesn't matter. We've covered our tracks. Everything we've done is legal. We're not blackmailing him. We're not threatening him. We're just shining a light. That night, Wilbur and I sat in the living room. His face was still bruised, but the swelling had gone down. He was moving better, breathing easier. How much trouble is Cole in? He asked. Enough to hurt. You think he'll come after you? He might. But if he does, it'll be public. And I've got insurance. Wilbur frowned. What kind of insurance? I handed him a folder. Inside were copies of everything. The coffee shop footage, Wilbur's recorded statement, the emails from Connie, the invoices, the timeline of permits and payments, all of it organized, time-stamped, and backed up in 3 separate locations. If anything happens to me, Tom has instructions to send this to every news outlet in the state. Same if anything happens to you. We've made ourselves too visible to disappear. Wilbur flipped through the pages. You built a case. Yeah, some men swing fists. I swing receipts. He closed the folder and looked at me. I don't want you getting hurt because of me. Kid, I'm not getting hurt. I'm building a record. This isn't about revenge fantasies. It's about making sure nobody ever says you asked for it, or you were drunk and fell. I want it documented, on the record forever, exactly what was done and who did it. He nodded slowly. What happens next? We wait, and when he makes a move, we finish it. Miranda showed up Thursday morning. She knocked on the door, and Wilbur answered. I stayed in the kitchen, but I could hear everything. Wilbur, we need to talk. I don't think we do. Please, just 5 minutes. There was a pause. Then Wilbur stepped outside and closed the door behind him. I moved to the window, where I could see them on the porch. Miranda looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Wilbur stood with his arms crossed, his face unreadable. My father's losing everything, she said. Contracts, investors, reputation. People are calling him a criminal. He is a criminal. You don't know that. I was there, Miranda. I felt his hands on me. I heard what he said. He was trying to protect me. From what? From me? She looked down. You don't understand the pressure he's under, the expectations, the way people watch us. So he threw me in a ditch to protect his image? He didn't mean for it to go that far. Wilbur stepped closer. Did you know? What? Did you know he was going to do something to me that night? Her silence was an answer. You knew, Wilbur said quietly. You didn't know he'd throw me, but you knew he was going to humiliate me, and you said nothing. You didn't think it would matter, because to you, I'm just the guy who doesn't fit at the table. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is you standing here crying because Daddy finally looks small, while I'm the one who got hurt. Miranda started to cry, real tears, shoulders shaking. But Wilbur didn't move. We're done, he said. You and me. This whole thing. Done. He walked back inside and shut the door. I heard her car start a minute later. Wilbur came into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and drank it in one long pull. You okay? I asked. Yeah, actually I am. Friday morning, Richard Cole made his move. He filed a restraining order against me, claiming harassment and threats. It was garbage, but it forced me into court. Tom met me there with a lawyer friend of his, a sharp woman named Angela Park, who specialized in harassment cases. This is a nuisance filing, Angela said. Cole's trying to intimidate you and tie you up in legal fees, but he's also an idiot because restraining orders are public record, which means his filing just gave us another opportunity to put your evidence in front of a judge. The hearing was short. Richard showed up with his own lawyer, a slick guy in a $1,000 suit. They presented their case. I'd shown up at Richard's home uninvited, played threatening recordings, and refused to leave. Angela presented ours. She played the coffee shop footage. She entered Wilbur's medical records. She entered the police report, including the officer's notes that suggested Wilbur had been drinking, which contradicted the ER toxicology screen showing he was sober. Then she played the audio from my phone. Richard's own voice, saying, "Your place is in the ditch." The judge denied the restraining order. He also noted on the record that if Mr. Cole had evidence of an assault, he should file a police report instead of wasting the court's time. Richard's face went red. He leaned over to his lawyer and hissed something I couldn't hear. Then he stormed out. Angela turned to me. You just embarrassed him in open court. He's going to retaliate. Good, I said. I'm counting on it. He put my son in a ditch. I just put him in daylight. Richard called me that night. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. His voice was tight, controlled, barely masking the rage underneath. Vincent Raines? That's me. This is Richard Cole. I think we need to talk. Man to man. I'm listening. Not on the phone, in person, tomorrow. My office. No. There was a pause. Excuse me? I'm not coming to your office, your house, or anywhere you control. If you want to talk, we do it on my terms. And where would that be? My shop. 2 p.m. Bring whoever you want. But know this, the whole place is wired. Audio and video, everything gets recorded. You're on notice. Another pause. Longer this time. Fine. Tomorrow at 2. He hung up. Tom called 5 minutes later. You just invited a rattlesnake into your house. My house. My rules. He thinks he can intimidate me quietly and salvage control. He's wrong. What's the play? We finish it, face to face, with Wilbur standing next to me. Vince, he needs to see it, Tom. He needs to see his father stand up and not back down. That's how this ends. Not with lawyers or paperwork. With him knowing I didn't let it slide. Tom was quiet for a moment. Okay, I'll be there. And I'll bring insurance. The next day, I opened the shop early. My repair business was small. 2 bays, an office, and a lot full of cars waiting for parts. I put up signs on every wall, audio and video monitoring on premises. I tested the cameras, checked the angles, and made sure every inch of the office and bay area was covered. Wilbur showed up at noon. You sure about this? Yeah. You think he'll try something? I think he'll lose his temper, and when he does, we'll have it on tape. Tom arrived at 1:30. He didn't come alone. He brought a friend, a guy named Luis who'd done military police and now worked private security. Luis was calm, professional, and built like a wall. He's here for deterrence, Tom said. If Cole brings muscle, we need equal presence. At 2 p.m. Exactly. A black Mercedes pulled into the lot. Richard Cole stepped out, followed by his lawyer and 2 private security guys, the same 2 from the gate. They looked around, clocked the cameras, and didn't like what they saw. Richard walked into the office like he owned it. He was tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck. His face was tight, his jaw set. He looked at me, then at Tom, then at Luis, then at Wilbur standing by the door. This is quite the welcoming committee, Richard said. You brought 3 people. I brought 2. Seems fair. His lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Raines, my client is here in good faith. Save it, I said. We're all adults. Let's cut the performance. Richard's eyes narrowed. You've been busy. Complaints, media, court filings. You've made quite a mess. I didn't make the mess. I just cleaned up after it. You're costing me millions. You cost my son his dignity. I'd say we're even. Richard's face flushed. Your son was a mistake. I was trying to correct it. By throwing him in a ditch? By teaching him his place. There it was. The truth, raw and ugly. Wilbur flinched, but he didn't look away. I walked over to the TV monitor mounted on the wall and pressed play. The coffee shop footage filled the screen. Clear, time-stamped, undeniable. Wilbur being shoved, falling. The audio kicking in. He doesn't sit at this table. Then I played the next clip. Richard at a charity event, losing his polished public face in front of donors, stammering when a reporter asked him about the ethics investigation. Then, the documents, the invoices, the emails, the timeline of payments and permits. These files have already been sent to 3 different places, I said calmly. Delivery receipts confirmed. This is not a negotiation. This is notice. Richard stared at the screen. His lawyer looked uncomfortable. The security guys shifted their weight. Some men can survive losing money, I said. Almost none can survive looking small in the eyes that used to admire them. Richard's hands clenched into fists. You think you've won? He said quietly. You think this is over? I think you made a choice, and now you're living with it. He took a step toward me. I will bury you. I will drag you through every court in this state. I will make your life hell. You already tried. You failed. His lawyer put a hand on his arm. Richard, we should go. Richard shook him off. No, I'm done being pushed around by some nobody mechanic who thinks he can... Nobody? Wilbur's voice cut through the room. He stepped forward, his bruises still visible, his eyes locked on Richard. You put me in a ditch because I wasn't good enough for your daughter. You humiliated me because you thought I was nothing. And now you're standing in my father's shop, on his ground, on camera, proving exactly what kind of man you are. Richard's face twisted. You don't talk to me like that. Why not? You already threw me out. What else can you do? Richard lunged, not at Wilbur, at me. He moved fast, grabbed for my shirt, shouting something about lawyers and consequences and respect. One of his security guys stepped in, reaching for me too. Tom intercepted him. Smooth, controlled, no wasted motion. He caught the guard's wrist, twisted, and put him face first against a workbench. Don't. The second guard froze. Luis stepped between him and the rest of us, making it clear there was no winning move here. Richard was still coming at me, red-faced, furious. He swung a wild, clumsy punch aimed at my head. I'd been waiting for that. Not because I wanted to fight, because it gave me the right to end this. I stepped inside his swing, saw the opening, and landed one clean strike. A short, tight shot to the jaw. Not flashy, not excessive, just decisive. This is for the ditch, I said. Richard's head snapped back, his knees buckled. He hit the concrete floor hard, eyes glazed, mouth open. His lawyer rushed over, shouting something about assault. His security guys started forward, then stopped when they saw the cameras. The audio from the monitor was still playing. Richard's own words, looping back at him. Tom held the guard against the workbench. Luis blocked the door. Wilbur stood next to me, watching his former future father-in-law sprawled on the floor. And I stood over Richard Cole, not shaking, not scared, not defeated, in absolute control. He hit the floor, and for the first time since the ditch, my son didn't look small. The office was silent except for the hum of the cameras and the audio still looping on the monitor. Richard groaned, rolled onto his side, and tried to push himself up. His lawyer crouched beside him, checking his face, already pulling out his phone. Don't, Tom said. Everything that just happened is on 3 separate cameras. He swung first. This is self-defense, and you know it. The lawyer hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. He looked at the signs on the walls, at the cameras in the corners, at the red recording lights blinking steadily. Then he put the phone away. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yeah, it is, I said. Richard sat up, touching his jaw. His eyes were unfocused, the arrogance burned out of them. He looked at me, then at Wilbur, then back at me. For the first time since this started, he looked like what he was, a man who'd lost. Get him out of here, I told the lawyer. The 2 security guys helped Richard to his feet. He stumbled, leaned on one of them, and let himself be guided toward the door. He didn't say anything, didn't threaten, didn't posture. He just left. The Mercedes pulled out of the lot, tires crunching on gravel, and disappeared down the road. Tom released the guard he'd been holding and stepped back. The guy straightened his jacket, looked at Tom, then at me, then walked out without a word. Luis closed the door behind him and locked it. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Wilbur exhaled, long and slow, and sat down on the edge of a workbench. Jesus. You okay? I asked. Yeah, I think so. He looked at me. You just knocked out Richard Cole. He swung first. I know, I saw. He laughed, short and sharp. I saw the whole thing. Tom walked over, clapped me on the shoulder. That was clean, textbook, and all on camera. If he tries to spin this, we've got everything. He won't try, I said. He's done. You sure? I'm sure. A man like Cole can survive a lot. Bad press, investigations, frozen contracts, but he can't survive being knocked down in front of people who used to fear him. That's the thing he can't come back from. Wilbur stood up, walked over, and looked me in the eye. Thank you. I nodded. You don't thank me for this. This is what fathers do. He smiled, and for the first time in days, it reached his eyes. Yeah, I guess it is. We spent the next hour cleaning up. Tom copied the footage to 3 separate drives and uploaded it to a secure cloud account. I wrote up a timeline of events, time-stamped and detailed, and saved it with the video. Luis checked the locks and made sure the cameras were still recording. By the time we finished, it was almost dark. What now? Wilbur asked. Now we go home, we eat dinner, we move on. That's it? That's it. Tom locked up behind us. We stood in the parking lot for a moment, the 3 of us, not saying anything. Then Tom got in his car and drove off. Luis followed. Wilbur and I stood there a little longer. Do you think Cole will press charges? Wilbur asked. He'd be stupid to. He threw the first punch, on camera, in a place where he was warned about recording. His lawyer knows that. His security guys know that. If he files charges, we countersue for assault, harassment, and attempted intimidation. And we win. What about Miranda? What about her? Do you think she'll reach out? I don't know. Does it matter? Wilbur thought about it. No, not anymore. We drove home in separate cars. The house was dark when I got there. I turned on the lights, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table. My hand ached where I'd hit Richard. I flexed my fingers, felt the stiffness, and smiled. Wilbur came in a few minutes later. He poured himself a cup, added too much sugar like he always did, and sat across from me. You feel different? He asked. How do you mean? Like it's over, like we can stop looking over our shoulders. Yeah, I feel it. He nodded. Good, because I'm tired. Me too. We sat there in the quiet, drinking coffee, not needing to say much. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Somewhere in town, Richard Cole was probably sitting in his big house, holding ice to his jaw, trying to figure out how a man like me had beaten him. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I'd done what I came to do. I'd stood up. I'd protected my son, and I'd made sure Richard Cole would never forget the name Vincent Raines. That was enough. Wilbur finished his coffee, set the mug down, and looked at me. I'm glad you're my dad. I'm glad you're my son. He smiled, got up, and went to bed. I stayed at the table a little longer, listening to the house settle, thinking about the ditch and the rain and the moment I found Wilbur barely breathing. I thought about the road from there to here, every step deliberate, every move calculated. I'd spent my whole life learning how to fix things. Engines, transmissions, broken axles. But this was different. This wasn't something you could fix with a wrench and patience. This was something you had to break before you could build it back right. And I'd broken it. Richard Cole's reputation was shattered. His contracts were frozen. His influence was gone. And everyone who'd ever feared him now knew he could be beaten. That was the victory. Not the punch, not the footage, not even the lawsuit he'd lose if he tried to file one. The victory was in the knowing. In the certainty that when it mattered, I didn't back down. I finished my coffee, washed the mug, and turned off the lights. Tomorrow I'd open the shop, answer the phone, fix someone's transmission. Life would go on, normal and steady. But tonight, I let myself feel it. Pride, relief, satisfaction. My son was safe. Richard Cole was finished. And I'd done it without losing myself in the process. That was the real win. 3 days later, the local paper ran a follow-up story. Cole Developments loses major contract amid ethics probe. I read it over breakfast, sitting at my kitchen table with coffee that had gone lukewarm. The article detailed how the city council had voted to terminate Richard's largest project, a waterfront development worth $12 million. The vote was unanimous, 7-0, no abstentions, no one wanted to be associated with him anymore. The same people who'd shaken his hand at charity dinners, who'd posed for photos with him at ribbon-cutting ceremonies, who'd called him a pillar of the community, now crossed the street to avoid him. The article quoted 3 council members. All of them used careful language, the kind written by lawyers. We take these allegations very seriously. The city cannot be associated with any appearance of impropriety. We must maintain the highest ethical standards. Translation: Richard Cole was toxic, and they were running for cover. I folded the paper and set it aside. Wilbur walked into the kitchen, still half asleep, and poured himself coffee. "You see this?" I asked, tapping the article. He leaned over, read the headline, and nodded. "Yeah, I saw it online last night." "How do you feel about it?" "Good, I guess. I mean, it's what he deserves, right?" "Yeah, it is." "Do you think it'll stick? Like, can he come back from this?" "No, not this time. When you lose a contract that big, investors get nervous. Banks get nervous. Pretty soon nobody wants to touch you. It's a domino effect." Wilbur sat down across from me, cradling his mug in both hands. His face had healed mostly. The bruises were fading to yellow-green, the swelling was gone, and the cut on his lip had scabbed over, but I could still see it when I looked at him. The moment in the ditch. The fear. The shame. "You think he blames me?" Wilbur asked quietly. "For what?" "For all of this. The investigation, the lost contracts, everything. You think he looks at this and says, 'That kid ruined my life'?" I think Richard Cole is the kind of man who never takes responsibility for anything. So yeah, he probably blames you. He probably blames me. He probably blames everyone except himself. Does that bother you? No, because blame doesn't change facts, and the facts are he assaulted you, humiliated you, and thought he'd get away with it because he had money and connections. He was wrong. That's on him, not you. Wilbur nodded slowly, processing. You ever think about what happens next? Like after all this is done? What do you mean? I mean, Cole's going down. Everyone knows it. But what about us? Do we just go back to normal? Do we pretend none of this happened? We don't pretend. We remember. But we don't let it define us either. We move forward. That easy, huh? I didn't say it was easy. I said it was what we do. He smiled, small but real. Yeah. Okay. Tom called me mid-morning, just as I was opening the shop. I answered on the second ring, balancing the phone between my shoulder and ear while I unlocked the bay doors. You see the news? Tom asked. Yeah. Read the article this morning. It's spreading. 2 of his investors pulled out yesterday. Big names, too. People who've been with Cole for over a decade, and his bank froze a line of credit pending the investigation. He's bleeding money faster than he can stop it. Good. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. This is what happens when you build everything on a reputation and then lose it. The foundation collapses. People don't stick around to see if you can rebuild. They just leave. Tom was quiet for a moment, and I could hear him tapping something, probably a pen against his desk. You know what the best part is? He can't fight back. Every move he makes now just digs him deeper. If he denies the charges, he looks guilty. If he stays quiet, he looks guilty. There's no winning move. That was the point. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, you played this perfectly. Dad would have been proud. The mention of our father hit me harder than I expected. He'd been gone 15 years, taken by a heart attack in his sleep, but I still heard his voice sometimes. Steady, calm, telling me to think before I acted, to measure twice and cut once, to never swing first, but to make damn sure I swung last. Yeah, I said quietly. I think so too. You need anything from me? Tom asked. No, I'm good. Just keeping my head down and working. Smart. Let the system do its job now. You've done yours. We hung up, and I went back to work. A customer needed a brake job, something simple but time-consuming. Another needed an oil change and a tire rotation, normal, everyday work. The kind of thing I could do with my hands while my brain stayed on autopilot. Around noon, Wilbur stopped by with sandwiches from the deli down the street. Turkey and Swiss for me, roast beef for him. We ate in the office with the windows open, a light breeze coming through, the radio playing something old and quiet. Classic rock, probably. I wasn't really paying attention. "Miranda called me last night," Wilbur said between bites. I set down my sandwich and looked at him. What did she want? To apologize. She said her father's a mess. Drinking every night, not sleeping, barely talking to anyone. She said he's not the same person anymore. He never was, you just didn't see it before. She also wanted to know if we could try again. Start over. She said she made a mistake, and she's sorry. What did you tell her? I told her no. I said too much happened. Too much she didn't stop. Too much she let slide because it was easier than standing up to her father. I nodded. That's the right call. You think I'll regret it? Maybe. Probably not right away. Maybe years from now you'll wonder what might have happened if you'd said yes. But regret's easier to live with than resentment. If you took her back now, you'd spend the rest of your life wondering when she'd choose her family over you again. That's no way to live. Wilbur took another bite, chewed slowly, thinking it over. She cried on the phone, said I was the best thing that ever happened to her, said she didn't realize how much she needed me until I was gone. People say a lot of things when they're losing something. Doesn't mean they mean it. Doesn't mean they'd act differently if they had the chance. You think she loved me? I think she loved the idea of you, the version of you that fit into her world without making waves. But the real you? The one who wouldn't back down? Who stood with his father? Who refused to pretend everything was fine? I don't think she loved that version. I think that version scared her. Wilbur was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Yeah, you're right. You ever think about calling her back? No, not really. I mean, part of me feels bad for her. She's stuck in the middle of all this. But that's her choice. She could have left. She could have told her father to back off. She didn't. So now she gets to live with it. Smart kid. He smiled. I learned from the best. We finished lunch, cleaned up, and got back to work. Wilbur hung around for another hour, helping me with the brake job, handing me tools, making small talk. It felt normal. Good. Like things were finally settling back into place. That afternoon, a reporter from the city paper called my cell. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Habit. Mr. Raines, this is David Chen from the Portland Press. I'm writing a story about Richard Cole and the ethics investigation. I understand you were involved in an incident with Mr. Cole recently. Would you be willing to comment? I leaned back in my chair, considering. No. I've seen the court filings. The restraining order he tried to get denied. The medical records for your son. The footage from the coffee shop. It seems like there's more to this story than what's been reported. Then report what's public. I'm not adding to it. Mr. Raines, people are saying you're the one who brought Cole down, that you compiled the evidence, leaked it to the press, and forced the investigation. Is that true? People say a lot of things. So you're denying it? I'm not confirming or denying anything. I'm saying I don't have a comment. If you want to write a story, write it. But leave me out of it. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear him typing, probably taking notes. Off the record? There's no such thing as off the record with reporters. You know that. Anything I say to you can end up in print, context, or no context. So no, not off the record, not on the record, not at all. He laughed, short and sharp. Fair enough. But for what it's worth, if you did bring him down, you did the city a favor. Cole's been dirty for years. Everyone knew it. No one had the guts to say it out loud. Then I guess someone finally did. I hung up before he could respond. My hand was shaking, just a little. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from the realization that it was working, that Richard Cole's world was collapsing exactly the way I'd planned. I sat there for a while, staring at the phone, thinking about what the reporter had said. That everyone knew Cole was dirty. That no one had the guts to call him out. That was the problem with men like Richard Cole. They operated in the shadows, using money and influence to stay protected. And everyone around them knew it. But no one did anything because they were afraid. Afraid of lawsuits. Afraid of losing business. Afraid of being next. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I'd already lost the one thing that mattered most when I found Wilbur in that ditch. Everything after that was just cleanup. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching the street. It was quiet, the kind of quiet you only get in small towns after dark. No cars, no people, just the sound of crickets chirping in the grass and the occasional bark of a dog a few houses down. The air was cool, almost cold. The kind of cold that reminds you summer's over and fall is settling in. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Frank Delaney says Richard's selling his house, moving out of state, probably trying to start over somewhere no one knows his name. I typed back, "Good riddance." A minute later, another text. "You won." I stared at those two words for a long time. You won. Simple, final, true. I typed back, "Yeah, I did." I finished the beer, went inside, and locked the door. Wilbur was in the living room watching a movie on TV, half asleep on the couch. Some action thing with explosions and car chases. I sat down next to him, and he shifted over without opening his eyes, making room. "You okay, Dad?" "Yeah, I'm good." "You sure? You seem quiet." "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how sometimes the right thing is also the hard thing, and how you do it anyway, because not doing it would be worse." He nodded, eyes still closed. "Yeah, I get that." I watched him drift off, his breathing evening out, his face finally peaceful. No tension, no fear, just sleep. I thought about the ditch and the rain and the fear in his voice when he said Richard Cole's name. I thought about the footage and the files and the court hearing where Richard's restraining order got thrown out. I thought about the way Richard's face looked when he hit the floor in my shop, stunned and humiliated. And I thought about my father, who'd taught me that you don't swing first, but you sure as hell swing last. I'd kept that promise. I'd waited. I'd planned. I'd documented everything. And when the moment came, I'd acted. I'd swung last, and I'd landed it clean. A week passed, then two. Life settled into its old rhythm, the way water finds its level after a storm. Work, dinners, phone calls with Tom. Wilbur started looking for a new place to live, something smaller and closer to his job. He was moving on, and I was glad. Not because I wanted him gone, but because I wanted him to have his own life again. A life that wasn't defined by what Richard Cole had done to him. The city formally indicted Richard Cole on charges of bribery and corruption. The grand jury handed down the decision on a Thursday morning, and it made the front page of every paper in the state. I bought 3 copies, not because I needed them, but because I wanted them. Physical proof that justice wasn't just an idea. It was real, printed in black and white. Richard hired a defense team, high-priced lawyers from Boston with fancy degrees and expensive suits. They held a press conference on the courthouse steps, talking about due process and presumption of innocence and how their client was a victim of a political witch hunt. But everyone knew it didn't matter. The evidence was airtight. Emails, invoices, testimony from Connie Voss, documents from Frank Delaney. He was going down, and no amount of legal maneuvering would save him. Frank Delaney called me personally to say thank you. His voice was warm, almost giddy, like a kid on Christmas morning. "You opened the door," he said. "I just walked through it. You earned it. You had the documentation. You had the motive. All I did was create the opening." Still, I've been waiting 5 years to watch that bastard fall. 5 years of watching him strut around like he owned the world, knowing he screwed me and got away with it. And now? Now he's finished. So thank you. You don't need to thank me. Yeah, I do. Because not many people would have done what you did. Most guys would have just thrown a punch, gotten arrested, and made things worse. You played it smart. You built a case. You used the system against him. That takes discipline. My old man taught me that. He said, if you're gonna fight, fight to win, not just for today, but for tomorrow too. Frank laughed. Smart man, I owe you a drink. Maybe someday. I'm serious. You ever want to grab a beer, talk shop, whatever, you call me. I mean it. I'll keep that in mind. He laughed again. You're a cold one, Raines. I like that. We hung up, and I went back to work. But his words stuck with me. Not many people would have done what you did. He was right. Most people would have taken the easy path. Filed a police report, maybe hired a lawyer, and hoped for the best. But hope isn't a strategy. And I'd learned a long time ago that if you want something done right, you do it yourself. Miranda left town. No one knew where she went. Some said Boston, others said California. There were rumors she'd moved in with a cousin in Seattle, or maybe taken a job in New York. Wilbur didn't ask, and I didn't bring it up. Whatever she was doing, wherever she was, it wasn't our problem anymore. The shop stayed busy. I hired a part-time kid named Danny to help with oil changes and tire rotations. He was 18, fresh out of high school and eager to learn. He reminded me of Wilbur at that age. Hungry, curious, not afraid of hard work. I liked him. People started coming around just to shake my hand, not customers, just people from town. They'd park in the lot, walk into the office, and tell me they'd heard what I'd done, that Richard Cole had it coming, that I'd done the right thing, that I was a hero. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a father who'd done what fathers are supposed to do, protect their kids, stand up when it matters, refuse to back down. But I thanked them anyway, said I appreciated it, got back to work. One afternoon, the older cop who'd taken Wilbur's statement at the hospital stopped by. He parked his cruiser out front, walked in slow, and stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was welcome. His face was lined, tired, the kind of tired that comes from years of seeing the worst of people. Mr. Raines. Officer. Got a minute? Depends. You here to arrest me? He smiled, thin and tired. No, just wanted to apologize. I set down my wrench and straightened up, wiping my hands on a rag. For what? For not taking your son's case seriously, for suggesting he was drunk when he clearly wasn't, for letting Cole slide because he had connections and I didn't want to deal with the blowback. He looked me in the eye, and I could see he meant it. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I studied him for a long moment. He wasn't lying. He wasn't covering his ass. He was genuinely sorry, and that counted for something. Apology accepted. For what it's worth, the department's reviewing how we handled it. New policies, better training. We're supposed to treat every case the same, no matter who's involved. No more looking the other way because someone's rich or connected. That's good. Long overdue, but good. He nodded. It won't bring back the time your son lost. It won't undo what happened. But maybe it'll stop it from happening to someone else. That's all anyone can ask. He turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at me. What you did, getting the evidence, building the case, making sure the truth came out, that took guts. A lot of guys would have just thrown a punch and ended up in jail. You did it the right way, the hard way, and it worked. I did it the only way that mattered. He smiled, nodded, and left. I watched his cruiser pull out of the lot and disappear down the street. That night, Wilbur and I had dinner at the house. I grilled burgers on the back porch, he made a salad with too much dressing like he always did, and we ate outside as the sun set. The sky was orange and pink, streaked with clouds that looked like brushstrokes. It was one of those perfect evenings, the kind that makes you forget how bad things can get. "I got a call from a lawyer today," Wilbur said, setting down his burger. "What kind of lawyer?" "Civil. He said I could sue Richard Cole for assault, emotional distress, loss of wages, the whole 9 yards. Said I'd probably win too. Said I could get a settlement big enough to set me up for a few years." "You gonna do it?" Wilbur shook his head. "No. I don't want his money. Hell, by the time the criminal trial's over, he probably won't have any money left anyway. Legal fees, fines, restitution. He'll be broke. Maybe. But even if he's not, you're making the right call." "Why's that?" "Because taking his money makes it about the money. And it's not. It never was. It was about making sure he couldn't do this to someone else. It was about justice, not revenge. You take a settlement, and people will say you were just looking for a payday. You walk away, and people will remember that you stood up for what was right." Wilbur nodded slowly. "Yeah, that makes sense. Besides, you already handled it. You stood with me. You didn't run. You didn't hide. You faced him down, and that's worth more than any settlement." "Thanks, Dad." "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I know, but I'm gonna anyway." We finished dinner, cleaned up the grill, and sat on the porch a while longer. The stars came out, bright and sharp against the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle blew, long and mournful. I closed my eyes and listened, and for the first time in weeks I felt something close to peace. Richard Cole was finished. Wilbur was safe. The system was working, and I'd kept my promise to my father. That was all that mattered. The trial started in late October, when the leaves were turning and the air had that sharp bite that meant winter was coming. Richard pleaded not guilty, standing before the judge in a gray suit that hung a little looser than it should have. He'd lost weight. His face was drawn, his eyes hollow. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. But everyone knew the plea was just theater. Legal posturing. His lawyers were doing their job, mounting a defense, but there was no real defense to mount. The prosecution had emails, invoices, testimony from Connie Voss, documents from Frank Delaney, and recordings of conversations Richard thought were private. It was an open and shut case, the kind prosecutors dream about, the kind that makes careers. I didn't attend the trial, neither did Wilbur. We didn't need to. We'd already won our piece of this. The rest was just procedure, the slow grinding of the legal system doing what it was designed to do. But Tom went. He sat in the back row every day, taking notes, watching Richard squirm under cross-examination. He called me every night with updates, his voice measured but satisfied. "He looks like hell," Tom said on the 3rd day. "Lost weight. Can't sit still. His lawyers are doing their best, but there's no defense. The jury's already made up their minds. You can see it in their faces. They're just going through the motions." "How long you think it'll take?" "A week, maybe less. Then sentencing. The prosecution's pushing hard for the maximum. They want to make an example out of him." "What's he looking at?" 5 to 10 years minimum. Maybe more if the judge wants to send a message. And this judge, she's got a reputation for hating corruption. She grew up poor, worked her way through law school, the whole bootstrap story. She's not going to go easy on a guy like Cole. "Good." Tom was quiet for a moment. "You ever think about going? Just to see him sit there and take it?" "No." "Not even curious?" "No. I don't need to see him in court. I already saw him on the floor of my shop. That's enough." Tom laughed. "Yeah, I guess it is." The trial moved faster than anyone expected. The prosecution laid out the evidence methodically, piece by piece, building a case that was impossible to deny. Connie Voss testified about the falsified invoices and the under-the-table payments she was instructed to process. Frank Delaney testified about the land deal Richard had stolen from him, providing contracts and emails that showed clear fraud. A city council member testified about the pressure Richard had applied, the the dinners and donations that came with expectations. Richard's lawyers tried to paint him as a savvy businessman who operated in the gray areas of the law, not someone who crossed the line into criminality. They argued that consulting fees were standard practice, that personal relationships with officials were normal, that there was no proof of quid pro quo. But the jury wasn't buying it. Tom could see it in their body language, the way they leaned forward when the prosecution presented evidence, the way they sat back and crossed their arms when the defense made arguments. They'd made up their minds by day 3. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Tom was there when they came back with the verdict. He called me the moment it was read. Guilty on all counts: bribery, corruption, fraud, conspiracy, everything. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, letting it sink in. Vince, you there? Yeah, I'm here. He's done, man. He's gone. Sentencing's in 2 weeks, but it's over. You won. I know. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You don't sound fine. You sound, I don't know, distant. I'm just tired, Tom. It's been a long few months. Yeah, I get that. Listen, when sentencing comes down, you want me to call you? Yeah, I want to know. Okay, I'll keep you posted. We hung up. I sat in my truck, parked outside the shop, and stared at the phone. Guilty on all counts. Richard Cole, the man who'd thrown my son in a ditch, who'd humiliated him, who'd thought his money and connections made him untouchable, was now a convicted felon. I thought about the moment I found Wilbur in the ditch, barely breathing, covered in mud and rain. I thought about Richard's voice on the recording. Your place is in the ditch, not with us at the table. I thought about the punch, the way Richard's head snapped back, the way he hit the floor in my shop with his lawyer and security watching. And I smiled. Justice wasn't always fast, but it was real, and it was mine. Sentencing day came 2 weeks later, on a gray November afternoon. Tom called me from the courthouse as soon as the judge handed down the sentence. 8 years. No parole. For at least 5. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes. 8 years. Yeah. The judge threw the book at him, said he'd abused the public trust, used his wealth to corrupt the system, and showed no remorse. She said men like him were a cancer on the community and needed to be excised. Her words, not mine. How'd he take it? Badly. Started crying. His lawyer had to hold him up. They took him out in cuffs. He'll be processed tonight and transferred to state prison by the end of the week. Good. Vince, it's over. For real this time. He's not coming back from this. By the time he gets out, he'll be 66 years old. Broke, disgraced, with no friends and no future. You destroyed him. He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone saw it. Tom laughed. Yeah, I guess that's one way to put it. We talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. I sat there in the quiet of the shop, listening to the sound of rain starting to fall outside. 8 years. Richard Cole would be 66 when he got out. Old, broken, irrelevant. His company would be gone. His reputation would be gone. Everything he'd built would be ashes. I thought about my father and the lesson he'd taught me. You don't swing first, you swing last. I'd swung last, and I'd hit exactly where it hurt most. Justice, it turned out, wasn't just about punishment. It was about balance, about making sure the scales evened out. Richard Cole had taken something from my son, his dignity, his safety, his peace of mind, and I'd made sure Richard paid for it in full. I went home that night and told Wilbur the news. He was quiet for a long time, just sitting there on the couch, processing. 8 years, he finally said. Yeah, that's a long time. It is. Do you think he'll actually serve all of it? Probably not. He'll get out early for good behavior, assuming he keeps his head down. But even 5 years is a long time. Long enough to ruin him. Wilbur nodded. Good. We sat in silence for a while. Then he looked at me. Thank you, Dad. You don't have to thank me. Yeah, I do. Because not everyone would have done what you did. Most people would have let it go. But you didn't. You stood up, you fought, and you won. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. That was enough. Life went on. Wilbur found a new place, a small apartment near the waterfront. He started dating again, someone he met at work. She was kind, grounded, the opposite of Miranda. I liked her. Tom went back to his regular work, corporate risk and private security. We talked every few weeks, mostly about normal things. Sports, weather, family. The shop stayed busy. I hired another mechanic, a young guy named Danny who reminded me of Wilbur at that age. Hungry, eager to learn, not afraid of hard work. One day, a customer asked me about Richard Cole. You're the guy who took him down, right? I don't know what you're talking about. He grinned. Sure you don't. I didn't correct him. Let people think what they wanted. The truth was in the files, the footage, the court records. That was enough. Autumn turned to winter. Snow came early, piling up in the streets, slowing everything down. I liked it. The quiet, the cold, the way the world felt smaller, more manageable. Wilbur came by on Christmas Eve with his girlfriend, Emma. We cooked dinner together, drank too much wine, and watched old movies. Tom showed up late, carrying a bottle of whiskey and a story about a job gone wrong. We laughed until our sides hurt. That night, after everyone left, I sat by the fire and thought about the year, the ditch, the fight, the trial, the ending. I'd spent my whole life learning how to fix things, and in the end, I'd fixed the one thing that mattered most. My son was safe, Richard Cole was gone, and I could finally rest. Spring came hard and fast, melting the snow in a week, flooding the streets. The shop was busy with people needing brake jobs and alignment checks after months of rough winter roads. I worked long hours, came home tired, and slept well. One afternoon, a black sedan pulled into the lot. I didn't recognize it. A man stepped out, mid-40s, clean-cut, wearing a suit. He walked into the office like he had an appointment. Vincent Raines? That's me. My name's Peter Gregory. I'm a private investigator. I set down my clipboard. What do you want? I was hired to look into Richard Cole's conviction. His defense team thinks there was prosecutorial misconduct. They're filing an appeal. Good luck with that. They're also alleging that you fabricated evidence, that the footage you provided was edited, that the documents were forged, that you coerced witnesses. I laughed. That's quite a story. Is it true? No. Can you prove it? Everything I gave the city was real. Time-stamped, verified, backed up in multiple locations. If they want to check, they can check. He studied me. You're not worried? No. Why not? Because I didn't do anything wrong. I just made sure the truth came out. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. I'll pass that along. He left. I went back to work. The appeal went nowhere. The court reviewed the evidence, found it legitimate, and upheld the conviction. Richard Cole's lawyers filed a motion to reconsider. That got denied too. He was going to serve every day of his sentence. Tom called me when the appeal was officially rejected. It's over, for real this time. Good. You don't sound relieved. I am. I'm just tired. You earned it. Take a break. Maybe I will. I closed the shop early that Friday, went home, and sat on the porch with a beer. Wilbur stopped by an hour later with Emma. They were talking about getting engaged. I told them I thought that was a good idea. You think I'm ready? Wilbur asked. I think you've been ready. You just needed to figure it out yourself. He smiled. Thanks, Dad. We stayed up late, talking about nothing important. Life, work, plans for the summer. Normal stuff. Good stuff. When they left, I stood on the porch and watched the street. It was quiet, peaceful. The kind of quiet that only comes after a storm. I thought about Richard Cole, locked in a cell, counting the days until he could get out. I thought about the punch, the way his head snapped back, the way he hit the floor, and I thought about my father's words, "You don't swing first, you swing last." I'd kept that promise. I'd swung last, and I'd landed it clean. Richard Cole had called my son worthless, had thrown him in a ditch, had tried to erase him like he was nothing, and I'd made sure the world knew exactly what Richard Cole was: a coward, a criminal, a man who thought money made him untouchable. He was wrong. I finished my beer, went inside, and locked the door. Tomorrow I'd open the shop. I'd fix engines and change oil and live my life. But tonight, I let myself feel it one last time. Victory. My son was safe, Richard Cole was broken, and I'd done it without losing myself. That was the real win.